Let's talk about marijuana. The push to legalize it in Oklahoma is gaining momentum. This is following the release, of course, of that recent magazine article where the president is quoted as saying weed is no more dangerous than alcohol. One Oklahoma lawmaker is taking the idea a step further, saying alcohol is worse than marijuana and weed should be legal.
I really do believe that we need to accept the realities that alcohol is a dangerous drug. Prescription drugs are dangerous. Marijuana has not killed anyone.
All right, the bill up for debate in Oklahoma would legalize marijuana up to 1 ounce and allow tax and regulation of the drug. Now, the relative danger of marijuana, of course, being discussed all over the country. The question is it really no more dangerous than alcohol, as the president says? Here to debate that issue with us is alternative health expert Peter Bedard and also John Redmond of the Community Alliance for Drug-Free Youth. Good morning, gentlemen, to the both of you.
Good morning.
First of all, before we get to the issue of alcohol and whether it's worse or better, let's give you 30 seconds each on first, your reasoning would be legalize marijuana in California.
Absolutely. As somebody who has healed himself of all kinds of things that I was only given drugs and surgery, pharmaceutical drugs and surgery to deal with, I had to turn to holistic therapies to find my way to actually heal myself and get my life back. I'm a big advocate for helping people do that, whether it's marijuana or whether it's iridology, whatever it is that people need to use to find their own way to heal that is holistic, that is overall healthy with the least number of side effects. I'm on the table.
All right, John, he's talking medicinal more here than just to the average consumer. You feel like it should not be legalized?
No, and I think, unfortunately, the debate has been framed in the extremes, either legalize it or incarcerate. And I think that there's a whole host of things in the middle that we can take a look at. We certainly need to take a look at criminal justice reform. But we need to look at the unintended consequences of legalization that most people aren't even thinking about, that other countries that have tried this have decriminalized to the extreme have had a whole host of unintended consequences.
Actually, that's not a whole lot true. Like Portugal completely legalized all marijuana use and most high-intensity drug use, and their crime rates have dropped, their addiction rates have dropped. The people coming forward and actually looking for support in breaking addiction issues has decreased tremendously.
Well, Portugal did not legalize it, and that's a real misconception. What they did was they did something very similar to what we do in drug court. What they did was, it's still illegal, but what it does is it goes to an administrative system where there's a whole host of things they can do. They can take licenses away. They can take.
They can work with people.
They can, yeah, certainly they could, as we do in drug courts. But it's a misconception that they legalized it. But when England moved it from a Schedule A down to a Schedule C, they had a whole host of problems. And the head of the London Research Council said, I wish we knew now, or wish we knew then what we know now, in that they had a whole host of problems and had to reschedule their marijuana back because, as the head of the Psychiatric Association said, we had 25,000 cases of schizophrenia that would not have happened without marijuana. All right, there are some health problems.
Let me interrupt you, and I want to talk about what the president said and if it did damage to the cause of keeping it illegal. I don't think it's more dangerous than alcohol, less damaging in terms of its impact on the individual consumer. I mean, the president just came right out and said,
well, and he's absolutely
right.
It isn't as bad as alcohol. As a drug and alcohol therapist, I've been in this field for a decade now. People who have addiction issues, if they even get addicted to alcohol, or to marijuana, the addiction rate is super, super low. And the crimes or the causes or the problems that these people have in their lives are nothing like alcohol. If we're going to allow alcohol to be a legal drug that we can go and consume anywhere, then I don't know why marijuana shouldn't be that. I'm not advocating that anybody can go and just have a smoke out at a restaurant. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that the harm that is caused from alcohol is far more exceptional than what happens with marijuana use. The biggest problem with people who regularly use marijuana, even on a recreational level, is that they get bored. They don't know what to do with their lives, and they feel that their life purpose is sort of missing them.
John, what do you feel about what the president said?
Well, I wish the president would have talked to his own advisors, health advisors, like the head of National Institute of Drug Abuse or National Institute for Health, because they are both come out against and talked about the problems of marijuana and marijuana addiction. And it's simplistic to say that alcohol is worse than marijuana. Which is worse, alcohol or tobacco? I think they both have their own problems. I believe that marijuana does as well. And when you look at what the president's talking about, rather than his own experiences as a high school student from the marijuana that he took back in the day, marijuana of today is far more potent and far more addictive. And to say that marijuana isn't addictive is not exactly true. It's about the same as alcohol, but for adults. But
no, it's not at all. Actually, alcohol is a 30% addiction rate.
All right, hold on, Peter. Go ahead.
It's about 15, but marijuana is 11. But when you go to youth, 1 in 6 who start become addicted. There are more kids in treatment for marijuana than for all other illicit drugs combined. There are more kids in treatment for marijuana than for alcohol. So to say that it's not addictive, it's not a big deal, it's benign, and let's not worry about that, that's not true. And the numbers coming out of Colorado are devastating.
All right, want to talk about that in a second, Peter?
So you're addressing the issue of children using any kind of drug, and that's not something that I think anybody is agreeing with. Addiction rates for children, we're not looking at giving children marijuana. That's not our youth. We're not looking at that. We're not looking at supporting that. We're talking about legalizing marijuana use for adults.
Sure, but when you do that, how are you going to deal with the youth? So, for example, anytime you legalize something, you have to have a whole host of regulations to try to ensure that the things that you don't want to happen, and then you spend most of your law enforcement trying to ensure that it doesn't. And to say that, you know, commercialization of alcohol hasn't targeted youth is they certainly have, and so is tobacco. We all know about Joe Camel.
Exactly,
and
which
when
is why we
marijuana
stopped that type of advertising.
Yeah, but when marijuana commercialization comes on the scene, they will target youth as well. And I think what we have to do is say, look, let's not use alcohol and tobacco as a litmus test for sound drug policy. Yeah. I don't think anyone would agree with that. So therefore, what will we do? And that's the question that hasn't been answered
Peter,
yet.
what about the whole idea of a gateway drug? There are those who started with marijuana that have gone to far worse things, and they swear that marijuana is where they got their start.
Well,
and their
that's absolutely
qualities.
a truth. Absolutely. Is marijuana a gateway drug, though? No, it's not. Is it a drug that most people who have addiction issues have used before? Absolutely. If you have an addictive personality type, it's a no-brainer that you're going to go and use marijuana. If marijuana was a thing you were first introduced to, because it is already in our community, it is so popular, it is in our culture, and it's accepted. If you already have a drug or alcohol personality type, yes, you're going to use it. But statistically, the people that don't have that personality type, they don't turn to anything more. When people use marijuana, it's not a gateway, and there's plenty of evidence out there for decades now showing that.
All right. John, I'm going to hold you off here just a second. Let's get up some Facebook question. Our Facebook question of the day: is it a gateway drug, and is it harmful to users? And we've got some responses, and I'm going to read them to you. And if you wouldn't mind just responding to what they have to say here. Okay, I can turn right here. It says, all right, Jacqueline says, grow up, America. All of your kids have either used it or have been offered it. I am 65 years old, and my daughter was offered it when she was 10. Alcohol should scare you to death.
I would absolutely agree with that.
Well, again, alcohol in youth is a problem, but so is marijuana. When you take a look at the studies that you were talking about earlier, those were done decades ago, but the latest research that NIDA has come out with, they've said absolutely marijuana is a gateway drug. And when you look at the 1% THC content of marijuana in the 60s to the 27 to 32% THC content today, it absolutely has health consequences.
Much more powerful today.
Absolutely has addictive properties.
Actually, it's much more powerful, but it depends. It depends what strain you're going. There are whole slews of drugs that are coming out right now at marijuana that have been engineered to be higher in cannabinoids, which are super good for our bodies. Our bodies benefit from these things, and they have very little THC, which is a drug to make
let's
them
move
high.
on to the next. Let's move on to the next question or the next answer. Gerald says the son we buried at age 46 started on marijuana, so he is talking about the gateway drug.
Absolutely, but calling it a gateway drug, and I'm so sorry for them. It's a horrible way to lose somebody with drug addiction. But it's not about that. Marijuana didn't bring him to other things. If he had that addictive personality already, he was going to be escaping, medicating whatever it was that he couldn't deal with anything else, because eventually that drug will wear off, and when you're in that much pain, you're going to look for something else.
All right, we've got to go, but John, I wanted you to get the comments that you you had about Denver and,
Sure.
and Colorado since the law, since it's been
I
legalized.
brought some statistics with me. In Colorado, Denver middle school, since they've legalized marijuana, past month use for middle school students are up 40%. Drug-induced under the influence marijuana driving has almost tripled. Denver teens, 74% of teens in treatment say they got it from the pot shops. The suspension and expulsion rates in schools up 30%. Traffic fatalities with THC with the driver up 33%. And hospital discharges with a primary case of marijuana up 46%. These are absolute results of legalization. So should we take a look at other policy issues and other ways to deal with it other than that before we go down the road of commercialization, before we go down the road of unfettered access?
Okay, Peter, quick reaction
Well,
to
I
that.
absolutely agree. We need to have access. Just like we don't bring alcohol into schools, we don't do that kind of stuff. We need to regulate it, absolutely. But taking it away from people's ability to have it as a recreational drug or a healing drug isn't necessary.
And the debate goes on. Peter and John, thank you so much. We appreciate both
Thanks
your
for having
times
me.
and your